Ah, welcome back, you beautiful disasters, you glorious traitors to mediocrity, you selfish, unrepentant, magnificently misunderstood architects of your own salvation. They called you selfish, didn't they? Oh, they said it with venom in their voice, said it like a diagnosis, like a crime, like the worst thing you could possibly be in this world of endless sacrifice and performative nobility. They watched you walk away from the table, watched you stop pouring from an empty cup, watched you choose yourself for once in your damn life, and they screamed selfish like it was a curse, like it was proof you were broken, proof you didn't care, proof you were the villain in their carefully scripted tragedy. But here's what they didn't see. Here's what their limited, desperate, parasitic little minds couldn't comprehend. When you walked away, when you chose yourself, when you said no more, not today, not ever again, you didn't just save yourself. You saved everyone. You saved the bloodline. You saved generations that don't even exist yet. You saved children who haven't been born from inheriting your trauma, your silence, your self-betrayal. You broke the cycle, and they hate you for it. Let's start with the accusation, shall we? Selfish. They threw that word at you like a grenade, hoping it would detonate your resolve, hoping it would send you crawling back, apologizing, shrinking, begging for another chance to bleed for them. They needed you to believe that putting yourself first was a sin, that protecting your energy was cruelty, that choosing your peace over their chaos made you the monster. Because if you stayed guilty, if you stayed ashamed, if you stayed small, then they could keep feeding off you. They could keep draining you. They could keep using your love, your loyalty, your endless capacity to forgive as their personal fuel source. But you didn't stay. You didn't apologize. You didn't shrink. You looked at that word, selfish, and you smiled. Because deep down, beneath all the guilt they programmed into you, beneath all the conditioning that told you your worth was measured by how much you could endure, you knew the truth. Choosing yourself wasn't selfish. It was survival. It was revolution. It was the most selfless thing you ever did. You see, they don't tell you this part when they're guilt-tripping you into staying, when they're painting you as the bad guy for having boundaries, when they're sobbing about how you abandoned them. They don't tell you that every time you said yes when you meant no, every time you smiled through the pain, every time you sacrificed your truth to keep their peace, you were teaching everyone around you how to do the same. You were writing the script for your children, your siblings, your friends, everyone who looked to you as the example. You were showing them that love means suffering, that loyalty means silence, that family means swallowing poison with a smile. You were coding the next generation with the same virus that nearly destroyed you. And the moment you walked away, the moment you chose yourself, you shattered that blueprint. You rewrote the code. You became the glitch in their generational curse. And now everyone who comes after you has a choice they never had before. Because you showed them it's possible to leave, possible to heal, possible to choose yourself and survive. They wanted you to believe that your selfishness would destroy the family, would break the bloodline, would leave everyone abandoned and ruined. But the opposite happened, didn't it? The moment you left, the moment you stopped playing the role of the eternal martyr, the eternal fixer, the eternal emotional punching bag, something shifted. The people who actually loved you, the ones who weren't just using you, they started waking up. They started questioning. They started asking themselves why they accepted so little, why they tolerated so much, why they believed love had to hurt this badly. Your absence became a mirror. Your boundary became a blueprint. Your selfishness became their salvation. Because you didn't just save yourself when you walked away. You saved every single person in your bloodline who was brave enough to follow your lead. You became the ancestor they'll whisper about in 100 years. The one who broke the chains. The one who said enough. The one who chose freedom over approval and survived. Now let's talk about what really happened when you made that choice. When you finally said no. When you finally put yourself first. They panicked, didn't they? The ones who called you selfish. The ones who guilted you. The ones who made you feel like a criminal for wanting peace. They didn't panic because they lost you. They panicked because they lost control. You were the glue holding together their dysfunction. The shock absorber for their chaos. The scapegoat for their failures. And when you removed yourself, when you stopped playing that role, the whole house of cards started collapsing. Suddenly they had to face themselves. Suddenly they had to take responsibility. Suddenly they couldn't blame you anymore for everything that was broken in their lives. And that terrified them more than anything. Because as long as you were there, absorbing the impact, they never had to change. They never had to grow. They never had to look in the mirror and ask themselves why everyone who truly loves them eventually has to leave to survive. Here's the part that makes you a legend, that makes your choice not selfish but sacred. You didn't just walk away for you. You walked away for the little girl inside you who never got to say no. For the version of yourself that believed love meant pain. For every moment you stayed silent when you should have screamed. You walked away for your future children, so they never have to learn that their worth is measured by how much they can endure. So they never have to choose between their peace and someone else's comfort. You walked away for your mother, your father, your grandmother, your grandfather, all the ancestors who never got the chance to break free, who died carrying the weight you just put down. You walked away for the bloodline itself. For the soul contract that said, someone in this family has to stop the madness, has to end the cycle, has to be brave enough to be called selfish, so everyone else can be free. And you were the one. You were chosen by pain, by betrayal, by exhaustion to be the circuit breaker, and you didn't flinch. They thought your selfishness would make you alone, would leave you isolated, would prove you were wrong. But look at you now. Look at who stayed. Look at who showed up when you stopped performing, when you stopped pretending, when you stopped being who they needed you to be and started being who you actually are. The real ones, the ones who loved you for you and not for what you could do for them. They're still here. They didn't leave when you set boundaries. They didn't run when you chose yourself. They celebrated it. They respected it. They loved you harder because you finally loved yourself enough to demand better. And the ones who left, the ones who called you selfish and walked away, they weren't your people anyway. They were energy vampires, wearing family faces, manipulators disguised as loved ones, parasites pretending to be partners. And you just performed the most powerful exorcism of your life. You cast out everyone who only loved the version of you that suffered in silence. Now we descend into the truth they'll never admit, the truth that haunts them in the quiet moments when they're alone with their thoughts. They needed you broken. They needed you guilty. They needed you believing that your pain was love, that your sacrifice was duty, that your silence was strength. Because the moment you woke up, The moment you realized you deserved better, the moment you chose yourself, you became dangerous. You became a threat to every toxic system they built, every manipulation they perfected, every lie they told themselves to justify using you. Your selfishness wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. It was the moment you stopped playing their game and started writing your own rules. And that is unforgivable to people who need you powerless to feel powerful themselves. So they called you selfish, hoping the word would wound you enough to come crawling back. But you didn't crawl. You didn't beg. You didn't apologize for wanting to breathe. You just walked. And every step you took away from them was a step toward saving yourself and everyone who comes after you. Let's go deeper into what you actually saved when you chose yourself. You saved your health, your sanity, the light in your eyes that was dimming a little more every day you stayed. You saved your future relationships from being poisoned by the trauma you were accumulating, from being sabotaged by the belief that love always hurts, that loyalty always costs, that connection always requires you to bleed. You saved your children, born or unborn, from growing up watching you disappear into someone else's expectations, from learning that their needs don't matter, from inheriting the silent scream you carried for years. You saved your creativity, your dreams, your voice, all the parts of you that were dying in the noise of their demands. You saved your soul from becoming a ghost, from becoming so small and quiet and apologetic that you forgot you were ever meant to take up space, to shine, to roar. They wanted you to stay drowning so they wouldn't have to face the fact that they were the ocean. They wanted you to keep suffering so your pain could distract from theirs. They wanted you broken because your brokenness made them feel whole, made them feel needed, made them feel like heroes for tolerating you. But you didn't stay broken. You became the villain in their story, the selfish one, the ungrateful one, the one who threw it all away. And you know what? You earned that title. You earned it by refusing to die for people who wouldn't live for you. You earned it by choosing your peace over their performance. You earned it by being brave enough to be misunderstood, hated, labeled, and still standing in your truth without apology. That's not selfishness. That's self-respect. That's self-preservation. That's the beginning of generational healing, wrapped in a middle finger to everyone who needed you silent. Here's where it gets beautiful. Every person in your bloodline who was too scared to leave, too conditioned to question, too broken to believe they deserved better, they're watching you now. They're watching you survive the thing they thought would kill you. They're watching you thrive in the space they said you'd never find. They're watching you build a life on your terms, with your boundaries, in your truth, without their permission. And something inside them is waking up. Something inside them is whispering, maybe I can leave too. Maybe I deserve better too. Maybe love doesn't have to hurt this much. You became the proof, the living evidence that it's possible to walk away and not only survive, but flourish. You became the permission they were waiting for, the example they needed, the ancestor they'll thank for the rest of their lives. You didn't just choose yourself. You chose every version of you that came before, every ancestor who stayed trapped, every past life that died in silence. You chose them by breaking the pattern they couldn't break, by speaking the truth they couldn't speak, by walking the path they couldn't find. And you chose every version of you that comes after, every descendant who'll never have to wonder if they're worth more than their suffering because you already answered that question with your life. You chose the children who won't grow up in the same dysfunction, who won't learn that love equals pain, who won't have to spend their 20s and 30s unlearning everything you just unlearned. You chose the future, and the future chose you back by making you the one strong enough, stubborn enough, selfish enough to say no more. Not me, not mine, not ever again. Now, let's address the ones who called you selfish, the ones who made you feel like a criminal for wanting peace. They're not sleeping well, are they? They're not finding the replacement they thought they'd find. The next person willing to bleed for them, the next emotional support system they can drain dry, because there is no replacement for you. There never was. You were irreplaceable, and they knew it. And that's why they fought so hard to keep you guilty, to keep you small, to keep you believing that your worth was tied to your willingness to suffer. But you broke free. And now they're left with the consequences of their own behavior. The emptiness they tried to fill with your light. The dysfunction they tried to hide behind your performance. And every day you're gone. Every day you're healing. Every day you're thriving. It's a reminder to them of what they lost, what they destroyed, what they took for granted. Let me tell you what they see when they think about you now. They see someone who didn't need their approval to know their worth. They see someone who didn't need their love to feel whole. They see someone who walked away from everything familiar, everything comfortable, everything they were conditioned to accept, and built something better with their bare hands. They see someone who chose the unknown over the unbearable, who chose loneliness over abuse disguised as family, who chose themselves when the whole world was screaming that they shouldn't. And that image, that vision of you, free, happy, unbothered, untouchable, it haunts them, because it's proof that they were never the center of your universe, never the source of your strength, never the reason you were special. You were always the reason, and now you're just living like it. Here's the part they don't understand because they never will. Your selfishness wasn't about taking. It was about stopping the giving that was killing you. It wasn't about being cruel. It was about being honest. It wasn't about abandoning them. It was about rescuing yourself from a dynamic that required your destruction to function. You didn't leave because you stopped caring. You left because you started caring about the right person, yourself. And in that choice, in that single moment of radical self-prioritization, you became the hero of your own story, the savior of your own bloodline, the ancestor future generations will study and thank and try to understand. How did they do it? How did they walk away? How did they choose themselves when the whole world told them not to? And the answer will be simple, brutal, beautiful. They loved themselves more than they feared being alone. They valued their peace more than they valued being understood. They chose their future over their past, and that changed everything. You want to know the real miracle? It's not that you left. It's that you stayed as long as you did. It's that you gave them chance after chance after chance. That you forgave what should have been unforgivable. That you loved people who were committed to misunderstanding you. That you stayed soft in an environment designed to harden you. The miracle is that you didn't become them, that you didn't turn bitter, that you didn't lose your capacity for love even when love was being weaponized against you. The miracle is that after everything they put you through, after all the guilt and manipulation and emotional warfare, you still had enough light left inside you to choose healing over revenge, growth over grudges, freedom over proving them wrong. That's not selfishness. That's transcendence. That's evolution. That's you becoming the person they never believed you could be, because they never became the person they pretended to be. Now we arrive at the part where your story becomes legend, where your choice ripples through time like a stone thrown into the ancestral waters. Because you didn't just save yourself and your future, you saved your past. Every ancestor who died carrying the weight you just put down. Every grandmother who stayed silent. Every grandfather who swallowed his truth. Every great relative who believed they had no choice. They're all breathing easier now. You did what they couldn't do. You said what they couldn't say. You chose what they couldn't choose. And in doing so, you retroactively healed the wounds they carried to their graves. You completed their unfinished business. You became the answer to prayers they whispered in the dark. The prayers that said, please let someone in this bloodline be strong enough to break free, to end this, to choose differently. And you were the answer. You were the one. Not because you were perfect, but because you were brave enough to be selfish. They're going to tell stories about you, the ones who stayed, the ones who wake up,